My birthday had always been a quiet celebration, just close family, a few friends, nothing too flashy. But this year felt different. I had spent the whole week cleaning up the house, decorating it with soft lights and flowers that reminded me of Mom. This house meant everything to me. Every corner had memories, late-night talks with Dad, helping Mom cook in the small kitchen, the smell of fresh paint I chose when I renovated the living room. I wanted this evening to be peaceful, full of warmth and laughter. Guests started arriving and the living room filled with cheerful voices. I was moving between the kitchen and the dining area, making sure everything was just right. Then the door opened again and in walked my sister, Vanessa. She hadn't told me she was coming, which wasn't unusual for her. We hadn't been close for years, but I still hoped that maybe, just maybe, she had come to reconnect. She looked stunning, too overdressed for the evening. Red lipstick, long heels, and a smirk that didn't quite reach her eyes. I smiled anyway, trying to ignore the unease I suddenly felt. She walked around like a guest in a hotel lobby, touching things, examining the house as if she were seeing it for the first time. It made me uncomfortable, but I didn't say anything. After all, it was still my birthday. When the cake came out, everyone gathered around the table. I stood in the center with Dad beside me. Just as I was about to blow out the candles, Vanessa raised her glass and tapped it gently. "Before she cuts the cake," she said, smiling at everyone, "I just want to say something important." I turned to her, confused. She looked directly at me and said, "Dad gave me this house as a birthday gift." The room fell silent. I could hear nothing but the sound of my heartbeat. My hand froze over the candles. Everyone turned to look at me. Some had nervous smiles, thinking it was a joke. But Vanessa didn't laugh. She stood tall, proud, like she had just won a prize. I looked at Dad, hoping he'd say something, anything. But he stayed quiet. His eyes dropped to the floor. I forced a smile and laughed softly, even though my chest felt like it was being crushed. My lips moved, but I didn't remember what I said. I just knew I had to stay calm, at least until everyone left. After everyone left that night, I sat on the living room couch in silence. The lights were still glowing softly, the dishes half cleared, but my mind was far away. I stared at the walls around me, the same walls that had held my life together through all its storms. This house wasn't just a place I lived in. It was the only constant I had ever known. Every room whispered a memory, every corner held a story. I remembered being a little girl racing down the hallway while Mom called out not to run indoors. I remembered the nights when she'd sit by my bed during thunderstorms, humming softly to calm me down. And I remembered the slow, painful days when her health began to fail. She became quieter, thinner, weaker. The hospital visits became more frequent. Vanessa had already moved abroad by then, chasing her career and freedom. I didn't blame her, not then at least. Everyone chooses their own path. But I stayed. I gave up job offers in other cities, turned down invitations to move away, and stayed here, because Mom needed someone. And when she could barely stand, I was the one who helped her bathe, who brushed her hair, who sat by her side holding her hand while she cried in silence. Even when she lost her words, she never stopped looking at me with love. I watched her take her last breath in the same bedroom she once decorated with yellow curtains and lavender sheets. After she passed away, I couldn't look at the house for months. It felt empty, like the soul had been ripped out of it. But eventually I decided to bring life back into it, in her memory. I spent almost every penny I had saved renovating the house. I changed the floors, painted the walls, planted her favorite flowers in the backyard. I added new curtains, soft lighting, and framed photos of our happiest days. Slowly the grief turned into warmth. The silence became peaceful instead of painful. This house became more than just a shelter. It became my comfort, my sanctuary, my pride. It was the one thing I had built and protected, the one place where I felt truly safe. And to think Vanessa could just walk in and claim it like a prize. It felt like she had reached into my chest and tried to steal the only part of my heart that still worked. The next morning I couldn't hold it in any longer. I found Dad sitting on the porch with his usual cup of tea, staring out at the street like nothing had happened. I stood there for a moment, just watching him, wondering how he could be so calm after what Vanessa said last night. My hands were shaking slightly as I sat down beside him. "Dad," I said quietly, trying not to sound too emotional, "what did Vanessa mean last night?" He didn't look at me. He just sipped his tea and muttered, "We'll talk later." Those 3 words hit me harder than I expected. I had spent years standing beside him, supporting him, sacrificing for this home, And now when I needed him to just say the truth, he looked away. I wanted to scream, to cry, but I held back. I didn't want to fall apart in front of him. Later never came. In the following days things got worse. Vanessa began acting like she truly owned the place. She messaged me asking when I planned to move out. She said she wanted to remodel her house and had already spoken to decorators. One day, a man even showed up at the door holding color palettes and asking to measure the living room. I had to send him away while trying not to cry. I confronted Dad again, this time more directly. Did you give her this house? Did you really just hand it to her behind my back? He looked at me, but his eyes were tired, almost hollow. It's complicated, he whispered. I just wanted peace between you two. Peace. I felt like I was losing my mind. Peace doesn't come by giving away someone's whole life to make another person happy. I was the one who kept this house standing. I was the one who stayed when everything was falling apart. And now I was being erased from it like I never mattered. Every day Vanessa pushed more. She sent messages telling me how she was planning to repaint the walls, replace the furniture, and maybe knock down the old fence. It felt like my entire world was slipping away while I stood there frozen, betrayed not by a stranger but by my own blood. And the silence from Dad only made it worse. I couldn't take it anymore. Watching Vanessa send decorators, talking like she owned every brick, while Dad sat there quietly with his tired eyes, it was breaking me. I felt helpless, like I was being pushed out of my own life. But something deep inside me refused to accept it blindly. So one morning I drove to Mr. Caldwell's office, the lawyer who had handled Dad's property matters for years. He'd known our family since I was a teenager. When I walked into his office, he looked surprised to see me. I didn't waste time. I sat down and asked him plainly, "Did my father transfer the house to Vanessa?" He blinked, then frowned slightly. "Not to my knowledge," he said. He pulled up a few files from his cabinet and scanned through them. "As of the last paperwork I processed, the house still belongs to your father. There's no record of a transfer to Vanessa." My heart started pounding. I leaned forward, confused. "But she's been telling everyone he gave it to her. She's even making plans to change everything." He sighed, then opened a locked drawer and took out a small envelope. "Your father left something for you," he said quietly. "He asked me to give it to you if you ever came asking about the house." My fingers trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a folded note and a small flash drive. The note was simple: "I'm sorry. Please listen to this before you decide anything." Back at home, I locked my room and plugged in the flash drive. A moment later I heard Dad's voice, weak, tired, but unmistakably his. "If something happens to me, don't trust Vanessa," he said. "I know how that sounds, but she's not the same daughter I once knew." He came back when I got sick, started visiting often, bringing me medicine, food, being kind. I was lonely and scared. She made me feel cared for. But slowly I saw her change. She began asking about the house, the papers. She pushed me to rewrite things. I never signed anything, but she took copies. I was too weak to argue. "I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner." I sat there frozen, tears running down my face. So he knew. He saw what she was doing, and he tried to protect me in the only way he could. The betrayal I felt began to turn into something else. Something sharper. I knew now that the truth was on my side. As I sat there, staring at the dark screen after Dad's voice faded out, pieces of the past started falling into place. I remembered the day Vanessa showed up out of nowhere after years of silence. It was around the time Dad had his first health scare. One day he fainted in the garden and I had to rush him to the hospital. He stayed there for almost a week. That's when Vanessa arrived. First I was glad. I thought maybe she finally cared, maybe our broken family could come together again. She brought soup, smiled a lot, and acted like she wanted to help. She even offered to stay at the hospital overnight. Dad looked touched. I remember thinking how strange it was that she knew exactly what pills he needed and where his important papers were. In those weeks things changed quickly. Vanessa started spending more time with Dad, whispering in his ear, showing him brochures about better care, asking questions about the house, the bank, even the electricity bills. I thought she was just being responsible. But now I realized she was preparing something. She convinced Dad to sign what she said was a temporary letter of transfer, just in case something happened so she could handle things legally. Dad was too weak and confused at the time to question it. And she was too convincing. What she didn't expect was that Dad would recover faster than she thought. One evening I overheard them arguing. She didn't know I was in the next room. I couldn't hear much, but I remember one sentence clearly. Dad said, "You went too far, Vanessa." She stormed out that night. I didn't know then what had really happened. But now, thanks to the recording and what the lawyer told me, I knew everything. Vanessa had taken photos of the fake transfer letter and used it to tell the rest of the family that she was getting the house. She played the role of the loving daughter while planting seeds of doubt about me, making me seem controlling or ungrateful. I began to understand why some relatives stopped calling, why others looked at me differently. But Dad, he saw through her in the end. Quietly, behind her back, he canceled every document, every letter. And not just that, he rewrote everything. The lawyer confirmed it. The real, final documents had only my name on them. The house, the land, even the savings account linked to the property. It was all legally transferred to me. He didn't say anything at the time. Maybe he didn't want to start a war. Maybe he was ashamed. But he made sure I was protected. He gave me the one thing Vanessa could never fake, his trust. And now I was done being quiet. That week I stayed quiet, but only on the outside. Inside, I was preparing for something I'd waited my whole life to do. Take back control. I didn't want to argue in private anymore or cry behind closed doors. I wanted everyone to know the truth, not just about the house but about me and the woman Vanessa really was. So I planned a small family dinner. I told everyone it was to celebrate Dad's health improving. Everyone, including Vanessa, was invited. The day of the dinner, I cleaned the house like it was the first time. I cooked all of Dad's favorite dishes, set the table just the way Mom used to, and lit candles in the hallway to make the place feel warm and alive again. By evening, the living room was filled with quiet chatter, clinking glasses and forced smiles. Everyone was there. Cousins, uncles, aunts, even the ones who had stopped calling after Vanessa whispered her poison into their ears. And then she walked in. Vanessa arrived fashionably late, dressed like she was going to a luxury event instead of a family dinner. She walked in with her usual smirk, complimented the curtains she planned to remove soon, and told one of our aunts, "It's starting to feel like mine already." My blood boiled, but I kept smiling. After dinner, I stood up and gently tapped my glass. "I have something to share too," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. The room quieted. Vanessa looked surprised but still confident. That changed the second I pulled out the flash drive and plugged it into the speaker system. Dad's voice filled the room. Every word echoed through the silence. How she manipulated him, how he regretted trusting her, how he warned me not to believe her lies. I didn't look at anyone while it played. I didn't have to. I could hear the gasps, feel the shift in the air. When the recording ended, I walked to the table and picked up a folder. Inside were the real documents. The property deeds, bank details, and legal transfer papers, all in my name. I held them up and said calmly, "I didn't want to do this. But I won't let someone steal my life while smiling in my face. This house, my house, is not a gift to anyone. It's mine and it always has been." Vanessa's face drained of color. She laughed nervously like it was a joke. "Dad, tell them she's lying," she said. Everyone turned to look at him. He had been silent until now. He stood slowly, leaned on the edge of the table and looked at her. Not with anger, not even with sadness, just disappointment. "This house was never yours, Vanessa," he said in a tired voice. "And you knew that." The room stayed silent for a long moment. Then the whispering started. Vanessa tried to speak, but no one was listening anymore. I didn't need to raise my voice. The truth had already spoken. After that dinner, Vanessa didn't give up quietly. No, she was too proud, too used to getting what she wanted through lies and manipulation. A few days later, I received a message from her lawyer, claiming ownership of the house based on a verbal agreement with our father. She had the nerve to demand I leave the property or pay her a portion of its value. I should have been angry, but honestly I just felt sorry for her. She didn't know I had already shared the audio recording and all legal documents with Mr. Caldwell, our family lawyer. He was prepared. Within a week he sent Vanessa a legal notice, not only dismissing her false claims, but warning her that if she continued to harass me or spread misinformation, she'd be sued for defamation and emotional distress. He attached a copy of Dad's recorded message and noted that Vanessa had already lied about the ownership publicly. When her legal team heard the full story, and especially the audio, they backed away almost immediately. No one wanted to represent a case that was clearly built on lies. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, but karma had its own way of finishing what I had started. Word got out, Not just in the family but outside. Somehow the story reached Vanessa's workplace abroad. She had a job in a financial firm, a place where trust and ethics were everything. Once they got wind of her being involved in potential property fraud and family manipulation, they started their own internal review. She tried to defend herself, but there was too much proof stacked against her. She called me not to apologize but to beg me to clear things up for her employer. I didn't even respond. I didn't need to. Actions speak louder than words, and she had made her choices. By the end of that month she lost her job. Family members who once believed her stopped returning her calls. Aunts who admired her no longer mentioned her name at gatherings. She became the girl who tried to steal her own sister's home, who lied to a dying father and got caught. She had burned every bridge she once stood on, and now there was nothing left but ashes. Me. I had my house, my peace, and something she could never take away, my dignity. After everything settled, I decided to reclaim the house. Not just legally but emotionally. It wasn't enough to just keep the roof over my head. I needed to make it mine again, to turn it into the home my mother had dreamed of and the one I had fought so hard for. The house had always been more than just walls and windows. It was filled with memories, love, and sacrifices. It was where we had laughed, cried, and fought our battles together as a family. And now it was time for me to give it a new life, my life. I started with the small things, redecorating here and there. I moved the furniture around to suit my style, giving the living room a warm, inviting feel. I spent days cleaning out the old rooms where Vanessa had tried to make her mark. Her presence still lingered in some corners, but every piece of furniture she'd chosen, every decoration she'd attempted to claim as hers, was removed. It wasn't about revenge, it was about taking back what was rightfully mine. One morning I pulled out Mom's favorite painting, the one she always kept above the fireplace. It was a serene landscape with soft hues of blue and green, and it had always been a symbol of calm and peace. I hadn't been able to bring myself to hang it up again after Mom passed away. But now, as I looked at the empty space on the wall, I realized I couldn't leave the house incomplete. With trembling hands, I placed the painting back in its rightful spot. It felt like a piece of me had finally returned home. As I stepped back to admire the room, I heard the door open behind me. Dad had entered quietly as he usually did these days. He'd been more present, but still there was an unspoken tension between us. He watched me in silence for a moment before slowly walking toward me. "I know you've been through a lot," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "And I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you sooner. I should have protected you from all of this." I turned to him, my heart swelling. Dad had always been a man of few words, but the apology felt heavy, sincere. "You were scared, Dad," I said softly. "I understand. It wasn't easy for you either. But you should have trusted me more." He nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "I was afraid of losing you, afraid of losing everything. But you," he paused, searching for the right words, "you've shown me strength I didn't even know you had. I'm proud of you more than you'll ever know." His words were the kind of reassurance I had craved for years, but it didn't completely erase the hurt. The betrayal from someone I had trusted, someone I had loved unconditionally, was still a fresh wound. It still stung every time I thought about how Vanessa had tried to tear apart the family for her own selfish reasons. But that was the thing about betrayal, wasn't it? It was always the people closest to you who had the power to hurt you the most. It was easier to forgive someone who wasn't blood, someone who had no personal connection to your heart. But when it came from your own sister, someone who should have had your back, someone you'd grown up with, it cut deeper than anything else. As I looked around the room, taking in the peacefulness I had created, I realized something important. Sometimes you don't have to scream or beg for justice. Sometimes silence does the job better. I hadn't raised my voice in anger, hadn't demanded anyone believe me or apologize. I simply let the truth speak for itself. I let everything Vanessa had done come to light on its own, and I let the world see the kind of person she truly was. I didn't scream or beg, I whispered to myself, I just let the truth do its job. And as I sat down in the living room with the painting now back on the wall and the house finally feeling like home again, I realized that I had won. Not through force, not through violence, but through strength, silence, and unwavering belief in what was right.